My sister scoffed. Missing one day proves you never really cared. After I stayed home sick, so I put her in charge of Mom's care, and by sunrise she was begging me to take back the responsibility. The day it happened, I was barely upright from a fever and a stomach bug that had me checking the bathroom more often than the clock. I had already missed half a night of sleep because I was sweating through my sheets and trying not to throw up again. My mom still needed help, though, because she was only 6 weeks out from a stroke and still needed someone around for meds, meals, and the little stuff that would have been easy for her before all this. That was why I stayed at her house 3 days a week after work and every other weekend. I did the pharmacy runs. I handled the physical therapy schedule. I made sure her blood pressure log got filled out. I set reminders for the pills she had to take at exact times or the whole day went sideways. My sister liked to say she was involved too, but her version of involved mostly meant showing up with a latte, staying 40 minutes, and leaving with a speech about how nobody appreciated her enough. I had learned not to argue with her when she got in one of those moods. She always sounded like she was announcing a truth everyone else was too lazy to admit. That morning I texted her that I was sick and would not be coming over. I told her I had put Mom's meds in the Monday organizer, left notes on the fridge, and arranged for the grocery delivery to come between noon and 2. I also reminded her that if Mom looked dizzy or confused, she needed to call the nurse line on the card taped inside the cabinet door. My sister replied fast, and even through text I could hear the attitude. She said missing one day proved I never really cared, and that if Mom meant as much to me as I pretended, I would show up no matter how bad I felt. I stared at that text for a long time because I was too nauseous to be angry right away. Then I got angry anyway, not loud angry, just that cold, tired kind where you start thinking in details instead of feelings. I had not slept in a decent bed in a week because I kept worrying Mom would get up alone and fall. I had already used 2 sick days in the last month for her appointments. I had driven her to the cardiologist in a freezing rainstorm. I had spent 3 hours on hold with Medicare because one of her prescriptions was coded wrong. I had bought her compression socks, adult wipes, a shower chair, a walker tray, and a lockbox for the stronger pain pills because the pharmacy told me to keep them secure. My sister knew all that. She just did not count it as real work because it was not dramatic enough. I texted back that if she thought one day was so easy, she was welcome to handle it. She replied that she would. That was the moment I should have known. She had no idea what she was agreeing to. Instead, I was so sick and so irritated that I decided to let her learn the hard way. I told her everything she needed was in the blue binder on Mom's kitchen counter. I told her Mom's noon pill went with food, and the evening pill could not be taken on an empty stomach. I told her there were disposable pads in the hall closet. I told her the PT exercises were written on the yellow sheet attached to the fridge. I told her the nurse visit was not until Thursday, so she would have to deal with today herself. She sent back a thumbs-up emoji. That alone should have been my warning. I stayed home because I honestly could not have made it to Mom's house without getting sick in the car. I lay on my couch with a blanket over me and the blinds half shut, trying to sleep between waves of nausea. My phone buzzed twice before noon, and I ignored it because I assumed it was either my sister realizing caregiving was not as noble when she had to actually do it, or Mom asking where I had gone. At 12:17, my sister called. I let it ring out because I was still trying to keep down ginger ale. At 12:20, she called again. Then she texted that Mom was cranky and wanted me there. Then another text came through saying Mom was being difficult and that I should have warned her about that. I almost laughed, which would have been a mistake because my stomach flipped again. Mom was not difficult. Mom was scared. When she got scared, she asked the same question 3 times. She forgot whether she had eaten. She sometimes tried to get up too fast because she hated needing help. If you rushed her, she got defensive. If you talked down to her, she shut down. That was something I had learned after the stroke and after my own fair share of mistakes. My sister had not learned it because she had not stuck around long enough to be corrected by it. At 1 o'clock, I got a new text saying Mom could not find the little orange pill bottle. That bottle was not supposed to be touched separately because I had already split the doses into the organizer. I told my sister to look in the Monday and Tuesday slots of the pill case. She replied that she had looked. I asked if she had looked in the kitchen or if she had actually opened the organizer. She answered that she was not an idiot. That is also when I realized she had not even checked whether Mom had eaten lunch. I had labeled 2 containers in the fridge with sticky notes because Mom would forget the difference between chicken and turkey if they looked the same. There were also crackers, applesauce cups, and a bottle of water on the top shelf because her blood pressure medication made her lightheaded if she took it without some food. I texted back that she needed to follow the sheet. She sent another message saying I was acting like she was incapable on purpose. I was still sick. So I made the mistake of explaining again. I told her mom's care was not hard because I was smarter than her. It was hard because everything had to happen in the right order. That annoyed her more than anything else, which should have been another warning. By 2:30, my sister called my aunt on my mom's side. I know that because my aunt later forwarded me the voicemail she left by accident. In it, my sister sounded offended that I had failed as a son and that she was having to pick up my slack. She said I had always exaggerated how much work mom needed and that now everybody could see what a mess I was making. My aunt did not respond the way she wanted. My aunt had seen enough of this family over the years to know who actually handled what. She called me instead and asked if I was okay. I told her I was sick but alive. She asked if my sister had really taken over. I said yes. There was a long pause on the other end. Then she told me to keep my phone charged and not to let my sister guilt me into anything before I was better. That should have been enough to stop me from caring what happened next. It was not, because around 3 o'clock my sister texted a picture of mom sitting in the recliner with the TV on. The picture was supposed to prove she was fine. Instead, it only showed me that my sister had already parked mom in front of the television and walked away from the situation like she was done. Mom looked tired in the photo. She looked confused, too, which was probably why I noticed her hands were clenched in her lap. I asked if she had given mom the 3 o'clock medication. My sister replied that she did not need me micromanaging her. Then she added that mom had been fine all day before I made everything dramatic. That was a lie, but it was the kind of lie people tell when they are trying to make themselves look competent. Mom had not been fine all day. Mom had been quiet all day, which was different. Quiet was usually a warning sign. At 4:10, my sister texted that she could not find the physical therapy sheets. I told her they were under the magnet shaped like a sunflower on the fridge. She said that was stupid and that nobody would think to look there. I did not answer that. I knew why they were there. I had put them there because mom liked to obsess over paper piles and I wanted everything in one visible place. At 4:45, my sister asked where the spare keys were. That was strange because she had been inside the house all day. When I asked why she needed them, she said she had locked herself out of the back door while taking the trash out. I sat up too fast and immediately regretted it. Mom had a habit of trying to open that back door when she got restless. If my sister had left the only easy exit unsecured, mom might have wandered outside. I told her to use the front door and keep the back one closed. She told me she already knew that. At 5:30, she called me again and her voice sounded different. Not apologetic. Not humble, just worn down. She said mom was refusing to take her evening pills because she wanted me. I asked whether mom had eaten. My sister said she had eaten a few crackers. I asked whether she had had dinner. My sister said she was trying to get there. That answer told me everything. I told her she needed to heat the chicken and rice in the microwave, pour the soup into a bowl, and stay with mom while she ate. She said she was not a nurse. I said neither was I. Then I told her that being responsible for someone does not magically make you qualified. It just means you have to keep going anyway. She hung up on me after that. I would like to say I felt bad in the moment, but mostly I felt exhausted. I had spent the whole day sick and half-conscious while still trying to keep a fragile routine from collapsing. I laid back down, closed my eyes, and thought maybe she would swallow her pride and do the work. I should have known better. At 6:20, mom called me. She sounded weak and embarrassed, and her breathing was a little too fast. She asked where I was. I told her I was sick but okay. She asked whether my sister was mad at me. That question hit harder than I expected. I told her no and lied badly. Mom knew I was lying because she always knew when one of us was trying to protect her from our own family. She said she was tired. I asked whether she had eaten dinner. She said she had some soup, but it tasted funny. I asked whether my sister had given her the pills. Mom said she thought so. That was enough for me to sit upright and start doing mental math. Mom was on a blood pressure med, a baby aspirin, a statin, a mild antidepressant her doctor had added after the stroke, and a diuretic that made her pee constantly if it was taken too late in the day. If my sister had guessed at any of it, the whole evening could turn into a mess. I asked mom whether she felt dizzy. She said a little. I told her to stay seated and drink some water. Then I called my sister. She answered on the 4th ring, and I could hear a panicked TV in the background and something clattering in the kitchen. I asked directly whether mom had taken all her evening medication. She said probably. I asked what probably meant. She said she had set the pill organizer on the table and mom had taken what she needed. I asked whether she watched her swallow them. She said no. I asked whether she had checked the compartments afterward. She said she had better things to do than inspect pills like some kind of prison guard. That was the moment I realized she had not only ignored the routine, she had also started resenting the routine almost immediately. I told her to check the organizer now. She got quiet. Then she said she did not know where it was. That was not possible. The organizer was the size of a paperback book. It sat in a bright blue case because I had bought the biggest one I could find for exactly this reason. I asked her where she had put it. She said she thought Mom moved it. I asked whether she had looked anywhere. She said she had been busy. I remember closing my eyes then and taking a breath so long it hurt. I told her to find it. She muttered something about me being impossible and then put the phone down without hanging up all the way so I could hear her walking around. The phone line was a mess of half-open kitchen sounds and frustrated muttering. Then I heard her open and shut cabinet doors. Then I heard Mom say something too softly to catch. Then I heard the sound I had been dreading all day. A crash, not a huge one, just enough to mean somebody had stood up too fast. I was already moving before I thought about it. I threw on jeans over my sweatpants, grabbed my wallet, and headed for my car. The whole drive to Mom's house felt like 3 separate bad ideas stacked on top of each other. My fever was still there. My stomach still hurt. And now I had to walk into a situation created by my sister's pride and my own decision to prove a point. By the time I got there, it was almost dark. The front porch light was on. The kitchen light was on too, which was unusual because Mom hated bright lights at night. I went in through the front door and found my sister standing in the kitchen with the pill organizer open on the counter and Mom sitting at the table looking angry and confused at the same time. There was soup on the floor. A glass of water was tipped over but not broken. One of Mom's shoes was off, and the other was halfway on. My sister looked like she had been caught doing algebra in the middle of a fire. Mom's face relaxed when she saw me. That told me more than anything else had. I did not ask my sister what happened right away because I could already see part of it. Mom had probably stood up to get to the bathroom, gotten dizzy, and sat back down after my sister panicked. My sister was trying not to look embarrassed, which meant she was about 3 seconds from being rude. I asked Mom if she had fallen. She said no, but it came out with the kind of hesitation that means maybe. I knelt down and checked her ankle and wrist anyway, no obvious injury. Then I looked at the open pill organizer. 3 compartments were empty, 2 were full. One of the full ones should not have been. My sister said Mom had been refusing everything and she was not going to force an old woman to take pills like a jerk. I told her the point was not force. The point was timing. She told me to stop talking to her like she was a child. I told her that if she had followed the notes, she would not have created this problem in the first place. That made her defensive enough to finally tell the real version. She had gotten annoyed because Mom kept asking where I was. She had decided Mom was being manipulative. She had moved the pill organizer because she thought Mom was reaching for it too much. She had also given Mom dinner later than planned because she had spent an hour on the phone with her friend venting about how nobody appreciated caregivers. By then, Mom had gotten upset and refused the pills outright. I remember standing there with my hands on the table and realizing the issue was even worse than I thought. My sister had not just failed to help. She had been trying to run the house like it was a favor to all of us. I asked if she had called the nurse line when Mom said she was dizzy. She said she was getting to it. I asked if she had checked Mom's blood pressure. She said the cuff was complicated. It was not complicated. I had written the steps down in marker on the side of the box. I grabbed the cuff, took Mom's reading, and got a number that was lower than I liked. Not emergency room low, just low enough to explain the dizziness. I made Mom drink water and eat a few saltines. Then I asked whether my sister had given her the night pill yet. She said no because my sister could not find where I had put the medicine chart. That was when I noticed the binder was no longer on the counter. I asked where it was. My sister said she had put it in her car because the kitchen was cluttered and she wanted to keep everything safe. I honestly thought she was joking. She was not. I went outside, got the binder from the passenger seat of her car, and came back inside with the kind of careful patience you use when you are choosing not to explode. The binder had sticky notes, printed med schedules, the doctor's office numbers, the pharmacy refill dates, the insurance card copies, and the yellow paper listing Mom's emergency contacts. It also had a page I had started keeping after the stroke with every blood pressure reading, every dizzy spell, and every appointment note. My sister watched me flip through it as if seeing it for the first time. Then she asked why I had never told her there was so much to do. I just stared at her. I had told her. I had told all of them. She just never listened unless the information came wrapped in drama. I told her I was going to get Mom settled and then we were going to talk. That seemed to scare her more than if I had yelled. I helped Mom to the couch, gave her the water and crackers, and checked her temp and blood pressure again. While I was doing that, my sister kept trying to explain why she had gotten overwhelmed. She said she thought I was exaggerating to make her look bad. She said Mom always got more needy when I was around because Mom knew I would handle things. She said she was only trying to help, but it was impossible to help when nobody gave her a chance. That last part almost made me laugh because she had been given a full day and had spent most of it treating the whole situation like an insult to her intelligence. I told her I had given her a chance. I had given her the instructions, the binder, the schedule, the food, the call list, and the exact warning signs to watch for. What she had wanted was not a chance. She had wanted a performance where she could look generous without doing any of the repetitive parts. Mom fell asleep on the couch at about 9:15. My sister immediately started whispering that she was sorry and that she did not realize it was this bad. That was not an apology yet. It was the beginning of one. I told her to sit down at the kitchen table. Then I went through the binder with her page by page. I showed her how many times Mom had been checked by the doctor. I showed her the refill dates and the times I had to go to CVS because the insurance system had rejected the first claim. I showed her the notes from the home health nurse. I showed her the list of things Mom refused to take unless they were cut into smaller pieces. I showed her the grocery receipts because I had been keeping those too after my aunt told me I needed a clearer record of what was actually being spent on Mom. By the time I finished, my sister looked less angry and more like someone had just found out a rope bridge was held together with dental floss. She asked whether I had really been doing all of that by myself. I said yes. She asked why I never complained. I told her I did complain. She just called it me being dramatic. That landed harder than yelling would have. She sat there staring at the table for a long time, and I could tell she was mentally sorting through every time she had accused me of being controlling. She had probably expected me to enjoy caregiving because I was the one who stayed calm. She had mistaken competence for ease. That is a mistake a lot of people make until they are the one being asked to keep a fragile life from unraveling. Around 10:30, my sister admitted she could not do this. She said it too fast, like she was trying to get ahead of the shame. She said Mom kept asking for me. She said she had tried to get Mom to just settle in and let her help, but Mom had cried after the pills and then gotten angry when my sister raised her voice. She said the house felt different when I was not there, and she had not understood how much I handled until she had to do it herself. I did not rub it in. I was too tired for that. I told her the truth, which was that Mom was scared because everything had changed after the stroke, and because the two of us treated that fear in completely different ways. I told her my being sick did not make me less caring. It just meant I was sick. I told her she had turned my one bad day into a test of loyalty because that was easier than admitting she had no idea what she was asking for. She cried a little then, which surprised both of us. Not dramatic crying, just the kind that comes from frustration, finally running out of places to hide. She said she had been jealous. That was the first honest thing she had said all night. She said I had become Mom's default person, and she kept hearing relatives praise me for being dependable, and instead of feeling relieved, she felt pushed out. I believed her because it sounded stupid and human, which is usually how real resentment works. Nobody thinks they are villainous when they are being petty. They think they are being overlooked. They think they are picking up slack nobody notices. They think the person doing the actual work is somehow getting credit they did not earn. That was clearly part of it for her, but it still did not excuse the way she had treated me, or Mom, or the work itself. I told her if she wanted to help, there was a real way to do it. She asked what I meant. I said I meant she could take the next daytime shift while I got some sleep, and then we would talk about what she could handle on a schedule instead of improvising like this. She looked horrified. That alone told me she had understood my point. She begged me to stay because she was scared Mom might need something in the night. I told her Mom would need something in the night, because sick people do not conveniently wait until business hours. I also told her I would not be able to function if I kept trying to manage everything while sick. Then I made a decision that probably saved my sanity later. I pulled out my phone and sent a group text to my aunt, my cousin, and my Mom's neighbor across the street, the one who had been quietly checking on Mom for months. I told them I had turned over the evening to my sister and that, for documentation, she was now the point person until morning. I was not doing it to be cruel. I was doing it because every family crisis gets worse when there is no record of who was supposed to do what. My sister saw me type it and looked uneasy. I told her this was exactly why I kept notes. If she wanted to accuse me later of leaving Mom unattended, she would not be able to. If she wanted to say I never gave her a fair shot, the text thread would show otherwise. She muttered that I was always thinking ahead like this. I told her somebody had to. At 11:15, I finally went to the guest room, the same room where I had been sleeping off and on for months. I left my sister with the binder, the emergency list, the thermometer, and the blood pressure cuff. I also left her a note on the kitchen counter because I knew she would forget things the second she got stressed. The note said to give Mom water at 2:00 a.m., if she woke up, to check her pressure if she looked faint, and to call me only if she thought there was a real emergency. I was asleep for maybe 2 hours when my phone started buzzing nonstop. The first call was my sister, then Mom's house number, then my sister again. I answered the third call because at that point I assumed somebody had fallen. Instead, my sister sounded on the edge of panic and said Mom was up and needed the bathroom and that she did not know how to help her get there without hurting her. I sat up so fast I got dizzy. Then I remembered I was the one who had been sick all day and I was somehow still the only calm adult in the house. I asked whether Mom was standing. She said no. I asked whether Mom had tried to stand. She said yes. I asked whether the walker was by the bed. She said she did not know. I told her to get it there now. Then I asked Mom through the phone whether she could hear me. Mom said yes, but she sounded groggy and annoyed. I talked her through staying seated while my sister got the walker. My sister was whispering loudly that she did not want to wake Mom up more. I told her it was already too late for that. This was the kind of thing that sounds cold in a story, but in the moment is just practical. If a person needs the bathroom badly enough that they try to stand too fast, you do not win by being delicate. You win by keeping them from falling. My sister eventually got the walker over. Mom used it to shuffle to the bathroom. Then my sister called me back while Mom was inside and said she had found the bottle of stool softeners under the sink, and she thought maybe Mom had been taking them wrong. I asked whether she meant the actual prescribed stool softener or the over-the-counter backup. She said she had no idea there were two. I told her there were not two separate bottles. There were the pills in the binder drawer and the liquid in the bathroom cabinet for emergencies. She had mixed them up with the leftover cough syrup from last winter. That was the first time I heard her breathe in a way that sounded like she was close to tears again. She asked how I kept track of all of it. I told her because if I did not, Mom would end up in the ER for something avoidable, and then the whole family would suddenly have opinions. Mom came out of the bathroom, and I could hear her tell my sister she was fine in that exact tone old people use when they are not fine and hate being fussed over. I asked her to check if she felt lightheaded. She said no. Then she said maybe a little. Then she asked if I was coming home. That question knocked the air out of me more than any accusation my sister had made. I told her I was still sick, but I would be there in the morning. She said she did not want to bother me. That sentence made me angry in the most private way possible because she had spent years acting like she was the burden while my sister acted like the hero for noticing. I told her she was not bothering me. I meant it. At 2:40, my sister called me again because Mom could not get comfortable and wanted her bed adjusted. At 3:15, she called because Mom said the house felt too hot. At 4:05, she called because Mom was anxious and wanted to know if I had forgotten her. At 5 o'clock, she called because the blood pressure reading was lower than before and she did not know whether to be worried. By then I was lying on the guest room bed with my eyes open, too sick to sleep and too annoyed to relax. Each call was less of an emergency and more of a lesson my sister was learning in real time. She had wanted to prove I overreacted. Instead, she was discovering that the difference between a calm house and a crisis is usually the person who remembers the dumb little details. When the sun finally started coming up, I got out of bed, showered even though I felt awful, and went to check on them. My sister was sitting at the kitchen table with her hair in a mess, and my mom's pill binder open in front of her like it had personally offended her. Mom was dozing in the recliner with a blanket over her legs. The house looked like nobody had slept. My sister looked up at me with the face of a person who had just accepted defeat and was trying to hide how relieved she felt about it. She said she could not do it. No extra explanation, just that. She said Mom had needed 3 different things at 3 different times, and every time she thought she had handled one thing, another thing came up. She said she kept feeling like she was missing something. I told her she was missing the whole structure. That was not me being smug. It was just the truth. Caregiving is not one task. It is 100 tiny tasks stacked on top of each other until one missed piece makes the whole day wobble. My sister rubbed her eyes and asked me to take it back. She said she was serious. She said she would help if I told her what to do, but she could not be the one in charge. I sat down across from her and let that settle for a second. Then I told her something I had already known for a while. The reason I had gotten so good at this was not because I wanted control. It was because no one else ever stayed long enough to learn. She looked ashamed after that. Not enough to magically become a better person, just enough to stop pretending she had been doing me some huge favor by visiting now and then. I agreed to take back the morning routine. I did not do it because she deserved mercy. I did it because Mom needed care and my ego was not more important than that. But I also told my sister there were conditions now. I said she would stop acting like she was entitled to judge my effort when she had never done the work. I said she would stop telling relatives I was abandoning Mom when she got overwhelmed. I said if she wanted to help, she would follow the schedule and ask questions instead of improvising with Mom's health. She nodded to all of it because she was too tired to argue. After Mom woke up, I made her toast and checked her pressure. The reading was still not great, but it was better than it had been at night. I called the nurse line and described the dizziness, the missed timing, and the bathroom issue. They told me to keep monitoring her, hydrate her, and bring her in if the numbers dropped again or if she got confused. Then I called Mom's primary care office and documented the whole mess in the patient portal. I did that partly because it was responsible and partly because I knew my sister would try to minimize the night if I let her. Records have a way of making people honest. My sister watched me write the notes and asked whether I had really been keeping this kind of log since the stroke. I said yes. She asked why nobody else had seen it. I told her because nobody else had asked. That one hurt her, but it was accurate. By noon, my aunt had stopped by with groceries and saw the state of the kitchen. She did not say much right away. She just hugged Mom, checked on me, and then gave my sister the kind of look older relatives use when they have already decided who they believe. My sister tried to explain, but the explanation sounded thin out loud. My aunt had known Mom since before we were born, and she knew exactly what the last few months had cost me. She also knew my sister had been acting like the family spokesperson while showing up only when the work looked visible. That afternoon, my aunt told my sister to stop talking and start listening. It was the most satisfying sentence anybody had said all day, even though nobody actually said it that way. What happened next was not dramatic in the movie sense. It was worse for my sister because it was practical. I pulled up the text thread. I opened the med logs. I showed the grocery receipts and the pharmacy pickups. I showed the record of my sick days from work that I had been saving because I knew eventually somebody would act like I was exaggerating. I showed the notes from the physical therapist, who had written that Mom did best when the same person helped her through the exercises. I showed the home health agency paperwork listing me as the primary caregiver contact because I had filled it out months before when no one else would. My sister sat there and realized she had been treating a whole system like a vague duty. Then she realized the system had a paper trail. That paper trail was the reason I had not lost my mind already. My mom ended up changing her medical contact list that week. She did not do it angrily. She did it calmly after seeing how the night had gone. She kept my sister on the general emergency list because Mom still loved her, and Mom was not interested in turning family pain into a permanent war. But she moved me to primary contact for appointments, prescriptions, and home health coordination. My sister was not thrilled, but there was not much she could say. The truth was ugly for her. I had not fought to become the default. I had just been the one who kept showing up. At work, I had to explain why I needed another short leave extension. My boss was actually decent about it once I brought in the doctor's note and the updated care schedule. He told me to keep my documentation tight because family situations always turn into paperwork sooner or later. He was right. 2 weeks later, Mom's insurance sent a letter saying they needed a more recent care verification form for one of her therapy approvals. I filled it out with all the same details, because of course I had the records. My sister tried to get involved in that part and immediately got lost in the portal login and the claim number. She called me 3 times in one afternoon asking what prior authorization meant. I did not say I told you so, I just walked her through it. That was probably the moment she started to understand that competence can look effortless only from the outside. Mom improved slowly, not dramatically. She still had bad mornings. She still forgot words sometimes. She still got frustrated when her leg hurt or when she felt like she was being managed instead of helped. But the routine stabilized. The meals got easier. The blood pressure readings settled. The nights became less chaotic because we had a better system. And my sister, to her credit, did change some. Not all the way, not enough to make her suddenly wise, but enough to stop pretending one visit made her a caregiver. She started showing up on the days I asked for actual help. She picked up prescriptions when I texted her the barcode photo. She sat with Mom for an hour while I went home and showered or slept. She learned how to read the binder instead of arguing with it. She even admitted once that she had never noticed how much emotional work went into keeping Mom calm. That was the closest she came to a real apology, and honestly, it was enough for me to move on. Not forget, just move on. A month later, there was another family dinner, this time at my aunt's house. My sister arrived early for once and helped carry food in. Nobody said much about the old fight, which was somehow more awkward than talking about it would have been. At one point, my aunt asked Mom how things were going. Mom said better. Then she looked at me and said she slept easier knowing I had the paperwork under control. My sister laughed awkwardly at that, but it was not a mean laugh. It was the sound of somebody realizing the joke was on her and deciding not to make it everyone else's problem. After dinner, my sister pulled me aside outside by the driveway. She said she had been embarrassed by how fast she had folded. She said she thought I would lord it over her for months. I told her I was too tired for that. Then I told her the real reason I had been so calm. I had known if I kept my head down and kept the records, eventually the truth would do the work for me. That was not some noble strategy. It was just the only thing I could control. She nodded, and for once she did not argue. The weird part is that I do not even think she was evil through any of it. I think she was jealous, tired, guilty, and desperate to matter. That does not make what she said okay. It just makes it human. And honestly, human is often more exhausting than cruel. Cruelty is obvious. Ego is messier. It sneaks in wearing concern and then gets defensive the second it is asked to do actual work. Looking back, the missed day was never the real issue. The real issue was that my sister wanted the credit for being caring without paying the price of caring. She wanted one dramatic gesture to erase months of ordinary responsibility. Real life does not work like that. Not with a stroke recovery. Not with a house full of medication schedules and insurance forms. Not with a mother who was scared and needed consistency more than speeches. I stayed sick that day and still did what needed to be done, because that is what the situation required. My sister took one night and learned the difference between looking devoted and actually being useful. By sunrise, she was begging me to take it back. And because I had kept every note, every receipt, every text, and every appointment reminder, I was the one with the stronger position when the dust settled. Not because I beat her, because the facts did. Even now, whenever somebody in the family starts talking like they know how much work I did, my sister is the first one to shut it down. She knows exactly how fast a calm household can turn into a disaster when the person holding it together gets sick. So do I. And Mom still has the blue binder on her kitchen counter, right where I left it, because every once in a while life hands you a fight that is really just a test of whether you were paying attention all along.